All right, hey everyone. Sorry for the very long delay. Had to take some exams, but this episode is going to be over harvesting, episode 6. So, this episode is going to be a little bit different because the original recording that I recorded earlier this week got corrupted. So, all of the scripting was done in that video, so it's already been done prior. So, instead of rescripting everything, I'm just going to go over what I scripted in. And also, today's going to be sort of a place file download day or game file download day. So if y'all join my Discord server, in the open source channel, y'all will see a game file for everything up to episode 6 from now. So yeah, get that if y'all want to start off where we are currently. So right now, if we play the game, you'll see that our harvesting system works. Let me move all of my items over here. And you see that, okay, if we equip some items, you see that it varies based on size. And also, if we go over here and we pick up an item, you notice that harvesting works and the carrot gets added to our inventory with the weight on it as well. So what is that, around 2 kilos or something. Same with tomatoes, you notice that. And you'll notice that a smaller tomato obviously has a smaller size. I'm going to pick up some blueberries. This one's a really small one, so it'll have a relatively small size. And let's say, like, okay, this one's a relatively larger a little bit. So we pick this up. Oh, actually, no, that one's smaller. Okay. And you'll see these cacaos are huge. So, yeah, let's get started in sort of reviewing the scripts a little bit. One thing I want to start off is noting the assets folder that we have, which is in the description of the video or in the Discord server, which just has all of the assets that we are using for the game. And next thing I want to note is we have one new module in here called fruitNameParse, which we will go over relatively soon. But let's see, right here, the first small thing I want to note for y'all is in main. So before that, right here, I believe isTween was, the conditional was if isTween equals true, then continue. So essentially that wouldn't have worked is because we're skipping over everything that's tweened already, even though we're trying to disable the prompt. So if we change this to equals false, then the whole line will run how it's supposed to be. And now in here, we added a remote event called harvest. And in our little prompt client right here, we fired the server whenever the harvest prompt is fired, like so. So for example, if it's a harvest or multi-harvest prompt, it's always going to have a folder called fruit prompts. Otherwise, the fruit prompt quote-unquote folder is just going to be a proximity prompt in the primary part. So we fire a server based on multi-harvest and single harvest. And then now, where we listen for the event is in HarvestService right here. So we can collapse this and we'll see that, okay, remotes.harvest.onServer event. So we accept two parameters right here. We have plant key, which is a string, and fruit number, which is also a string, which you'll see it correlates with these two values or arguments that we passed in. So if we go over here, let me go through step by step on what this sort of does. So first off, we actually want to find if the server folder, which is the planted seeds right here, actually has the plant key that we're trying to harvest. And we also want to get the seed data for it. And next, we want to check for the owner of the plant, the owner player, and get the owner's player data. And actually validate if the plant is in the saved plot data. So we want to check if it's in the server folder first and in the plot data that we're saving. And then we check for the growth percentage. So if it's less than 100, then it's not fully grown yet, of course, and then we don't do anything. And otherwise, we will just check if it's multi-harvest, we do different functionality, otherwise, yeah. Like so. And let's see, okay, up here is where we're actually harvesting the plant. So you notice that we did service.harvest, which calls this function right here. And this function accepts a couple parameters. You have owner plot data, which is obviously the plot data of the owner. the player, which is you, the player is trying to harvest the plant, the found plant model, which is a server model, the fruit number, and multi-harvest. So if a server configuration and a multi-harvest is true, then we want to check if the player is actually within the range for them to harvest. Because obviously, since we're firing from the server, exploiters could sort of just like loop through all of the server objects and fire a server. So another way for us to check is just see if the player is actually within the range that we want them to harvest from, which is done through this function right here, a magnitude check. So the max activation distance is always going to be 10, which you can see right here, 10. And yeah, that's what this function does. And then now, this is only for multi-harvest. So we're checking for the fruit folder, and we are giving ourselves the fruit, and we're setting the mutations, we're resetting all of the fruit values. Now, this is different from single harvest, because after single harvest, we're removing the plant or the model from the workspace and player data. Because obviously, single harvest plants will get destroyed after they get harvested. And of course, we're giving the fruit, like so. So this is significant because if you play the game, right? Let me give myself some carrot seeds. Let's go over here to my garden and plant some seeds. You notice that for single harvest, these plants get destroyed immediately. So, for example, if we go to workspace and plant seeds, go to our carrot, this one, we harvest it, you notice that it gets destroyed as well as the client model gets destroyed. However, if we go to, like, let's say our cacao plant right here, let's find the right one that we want to harvest, this one. If we go over here, you see that, okay, it gets removed, like so, but it'll grow back eventually. So let's see what our harvest interval is for that. So it's around 5 minutes for this to fully regrow back. So that's why we don't destroy it for multi-harvest. We only set it to false, so it can visually disappear and respawn after a certain amount of time, which, if you remember, we scripted in our plot service right here, where we're setting the harvest values back to their, we're checking the last harvest interval and checking if it's within the amount of time, and we're setting it back to true, like so. And let's see what else we want to do. Another thing we want to do is we want to actually reset the size scaling. So right here we can say fruit folder dot size scaling dot value equals, let's just say 1. We're resetting it, right? And when it regrows, as you can see right here, we can say fruit dot, let's say, size scaling dot value equals our seed service, so we can get seed service. And we can say seed service dot get random fruit size, and of course we want the name of the fruit, so we'll just say seed name, comma, and any extra data we want. So yeah, basically what this does is that when it regrows, it randomizes the fruit scaling again every time it regrows. And we also need to say, okay, if not can harvest that value, then set it to true. Because if we didn't have this conditional right here, it'll always constantly reset the scale, and every time that this is greater than. So we want to check if it's not if it's harvestable or not. If it's not, then we set it true and we set the scaling once. And let me set the cacao seed, the harvest interval, to maybe 5 seconds, just to demonstrate. So if we go over here, you'll see that this regrew. If we harvest it, and then we wait 5 seconds, it should grow back, as you can see. And let's harvest all of these plants. and wait 5 seconds, and it regrows. So yeah, that's exactly how we want it to be. And the next thing I want to note for y'all is the actual giving the fruits or the crops into your inventory. Because you notice we have a new function in InventoryService called giveFruit, which accepts the player, the fruit name, and just the table or dictionary of the fruit data. So we go to InventoryService, and the way we save our fruit is similar to how we sort of generate the key for our plot data. So we want every fruit to have a unique key. The reason for this is, let's say a certain fruit has the exact same mutations, the exact fruit name, and the same fruit size. We don't want that to overwrite, because if we save the same sort of data name twice, it'll just overwrite the previously saved one. So here, if we generate a random fruit key, it'll eliminate that. So over here, we check for the seed data, and we check fruit attributes and things like that. And we also want to get the player's data, of course. Okay, and now this is where we're saving the size. So we're saying size to save. If it's multi-harvest, then we're saving the fruit size, which is just the individual fruits on the plant. Otherwise, if it's not like a carrot, we're saving the overall plant size. And now string to save, right here. So this is the string or the tool name that we want to display right here. So you notice that, okay, if there's no mutations at all, we're just saving it normally, like fruit name and the bracket string to save, kilograms. And then after that, if there is mutations, then we're saving it how mutations are saved. And then we're just adding the fruit to our inventory, like so. And we're saving it. The fruit key is our index, and our string to save is this string right here. And then we're updating our inventory. So first thing I want to note for y'all is we added some more functionality to the createNewTool function. And this is where our sort of fruitNameParse, which I mentioned earlier, comes into play. So this function is a lot to look at. But all I want y'all to know is, if y'all don't know what match or any string function does, look it up on the dev forum. So we get a dev forum or a documentation, we can look up string match, Roblox documentation, and then it gives you all of the things or information of what that does. So essentially what this function does is it separates the saved string into 3 different values. So mutations, which is a table, the weight, which is a number, of course, and the fruit name only. Which, if we go to InventoryService, you'll notice that essentially what this does is, let's say we have a fruit called Twilight Golden Shot. And then our fruit name, let's say blueberry, and our weight, which is around maybe 5.2 kilograms, like so. So what this script does is it takes this sort of bracket right here and turns it into a table. It separates all these individual strings and puts them into a table. So for example, our mutations table looks something like this. Twilight, golden, and shocked, like so. And if there's no mutations, if it looks like this, then the table will just be empty. And obviously fruit name only will be equal to blueberry. And our size, our weight, will just be 5.42 in a number, like so. So this is what this sort of module does. And over here we're checking, okay, if mutations and the weight is greater than 0, because obviously there's not going to be a fruit with a weight less than 0. And the fruit name, and we're finding the tool in the replicator storage assets. We're cloning the tool, and we're setting a new attribute called isFruit equals true. And we're setting the fruit ID to the actual saved ID that we had, the generate fruit key. And we're naming the fruit to the string that we saved. Which above here, you notice that the fruit key is this, which is our true name. or our fruit ID, and the tool.name is equal to the string to save. And then right here, we're scaling the item based on the weight. So we're scaling the item, the whole model up proportionately based on what the weight of the saved fruit is. And if we scale the size of it, we also need to offset it from the player. Because scaling only affects the size, we also want it to affect how far the new size is from the player. So this is how we're going to do it. And then we're pairing it to the backpack. And yeah, that's pretty much it. There was some minor additions or changes to inventory updated. Just checking if there's already the item in here and creating a new tool, otherwise. And the major part is the createNewTool function, which we added compatibility with fruits. And the remove item function just removes fruits now, based on fruit ID. So, all in all, that's pretty much the harvest system. So once again, if we play the game and we go to our garden, let's harvest all these carrots over here. You notice that they get permanently destroyed from the plot. And we get the carrots. And similarly, well not similarly, if we harvest, let's say, these cacao seeds, or these cacao plants, you notice that they grow back every 5 seconds because we changed it that way. And once again, in seed data.cacao seed, our harvest interval, you see it's 5 seconds. Alright, next up, another thing I want to know for y'all, because I saw it in sort of the Discord and comments, is how to actually add in new plants. So first off, you want all of the folders to be correspondent to the names. For example, blueberry corresponds to blueberry, like so. And yeah. So another thing, you notice that for every plant, there's a handle and there's parts in here. So every part in here, the handle is welded to that part. That allows us to scale it proportionately. So that's how you do it for tools. And for the blueberries or every other plant, we have a server model and a client model. I want you to note that the server model and the client model all have the same size. So let's say we move this right here. Yeah, so the server model has the same size as the client model. The only thing different is the server model doesn't have all of the parts that the client has. It only has the primary part and the fruit prompts, which correspond to each fruit location, like so. And obviously you want this folder to be called fruit prompts and these to be labeled 1, 2, 3 respectively. In our client model, always want to have a primary part and set the model's primary part to that primary part. Same thing with a server model. And you see parts in here and fruit. This is crucial. You always want it to be called fruit underscore whatever. Because if you notice on our script, if we do Control-Shift-F and we do fruit underscore, that's how we're actually sort of scaling the fruits and finding the fruits. So yeah. Obviously, if you want it to be different, you can just change this to like fruit underscore or fruit like that. You just need to change it based on what you change it to. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And you notice that each fruit has a primary part in it. That's how we scale it. Now let's go ahead and move these back. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And also want you to remember that in our modules and our seed data, I always want it to be blueberry seed, not blueberry and things like that. And obviously change these to how you want. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, in server storage, you know, seeds right here. These are actual seed models right here. So obviously you want to name it respectively based on blueberry seed correspondent. So yeah, that's pretty much gonna wrap up this sort of review video because the original video got corrupted where I actually scripted it. But yeah, the game file will be in the Discord server. So I know probably most of y'all want it just to alleviate the part of having to watch the video and scripting through it. But I just want you to hopefully understand how the scripting process is done. And that's just sort of the main focus. So yeah, hope you all enjoyed episode 6. And the next episode we'll be going over selling items. What you get to sell, you can sell your items. And yeah, thanks for watching and peace.